Hi all, and welcome to the next episode of An Evening with Thomas. And our guest today is Alastair, and here's our first music choice. Hi all, and welcome to another episode of An Evening with Thomas. We're going global. We've been to England and been to Ireland the last couple of weeks, and this week we're off to Holland, or the Netherlands as it's now called. And I'm delighted to have Alastair on as our guest today. And she's picked music of her choice. And I hope you enjoyed that first track. Open Your Eyes, You Can Fly. Well, we've covered that many times in our show on Thursday. But Alastair, a little bit about her before we bring her on, is the founder and driving force behind a news blog called Alastair.nl. And now this is a Dutch website that covers a range of topics, goes quite across a broad spectrum of alternative viewpoints ranging from geopolitics, some intel, the Illuminati, true history, sexual and satanic abuse, the cosmos and ET presence, plus spirituality, magic and health. So it's quite a collective there. And they try to offer an overview perspective on the worldwide control structure and freedom movement that strives for a brighter future. And the website also covers our show, The Truth, Honour and Integrity, and provides a Dutch summary of the major topics in those shows. Now, Alastair is a pseudonym that originates from the south of the Netherlands, from below the rivers, as they call it over in Holland, which means from the Catholic part. So there's still a religious divide over there. Of course, the last two shows we had the two Irish lads, and it's still going on there. It's like time never changed, did it? When becoming aware of our own spiritual mission to help bring down the evil cabal, this background worked as a catalyst, knowing that the Vatican is a major and often hidden player in the cabal control structure. Yes, it is. Now, she dedicates a substantial amount of her free time and life energy in sharing her knowledge and insights about aspects that the mainstream media doesn't cover. They will in future. They will in future. And she tries to inspire others to expand their consciousness and strive for a better world. So all round, a good and nice person. We need more of those type of people. And so it's with my delight I'm going to introduce Ella. Hi, Ella.
Hello, Thomas. It's nice to be here.
Yes. Well, it's nice to that the show's going global. And it's not, because we get, yes. It says that, it's all about America. Well, no, it's not. The news news part covers aspects of America. It covers, but I think we've gone right around the world with news from various countries, because it's although the battlefield is America, because we have more clowns, as I call it, here than most places, but the rest of the world also has to clean house. And it's nice that, from my perspective, Holland's in the top 5 of listeners.
Yes.
It's good.
Nice to hear.
What was surprising was Cyprus was in the top 10.
Yeah.
I've no idea. We welcome.
There's some independent issues there.
Yeah.
Could be.
Maybe there's a Langley base there. Who knows?
Oh yeah.
Perhaps they'll learn something.
Yeah.
So, you carry on.
Well, we are an international group, and we are connected worldwide by sharing the same ideas and values. So it's nice to know for the other listeners that your work is being appreciated on this side of the ocean. So it's nice to share that information.
Yeah, it is a global thing. It's it involves us all. Next week we're heading off to Australia, and there's a lot of stuff going on down there, down under as we call it. Of course, that's where the 16,500 year treaty ended. It's those tribal people, mainly from that region. And so we may get to hear some more updates on the tribal side of things next week. Anyway.
Okay, exciting. Yeah.
That should be good. Something to look forward to. So, what was your prelude to your awakening?
Well, in a nutshell, growing up was very much in trying to break free, basically, from a very narrow-minded surrounding, and knowing things can be different, and wanting to do things different, and then, of course, people perceive you as a troublemaker. Like, you always want to do things different, and why don't you do just as we do it, and why do you have to go against the grain, and that sort of thing. And I wasn't a troublemaker at all, certainly not as a child, more introverted and a bit shy, but got a bit more outspoken in my teenage years, and trying to free myself from limited thinking. And as I told you, and you mentioned it in the intro, I'm from the south, grew up in a rural area, and the reason why I moved abroad at a certain point was also related to trying to break free from that environment and sort of figure out who I am and what my standards are and ideas and stuff like that. And I'm from the Catholic part. I mean, typically the South provinces, Brabant and Limburg, they're Catholic. And as I've written on my blog, I'm not abused by the Catholic Church in this lifetime, but I feel I have something to settle.
In previous, I think we all have.
I don't know if it's from past lifetimes. I don't have access to that, to those memories. The memory wipe worked very well on me, I have to say. But eventually, when I after college, I moved to New York, and it obviously 9/11 was a big deal for me. I didn't live there at the time anymore, but one of the first rooms where I lived in Manhattan, I had a tiny window looking out on downtown Manhattan, and I had a view on the World Trade Center. Wow. And when I moved to Brooklyn, I used to go into Manhattan on my bike, and the Americans would laugh at me like, "You're so Dutch." But I loved it. I loved the bike ride, and the minute you cross the Brooklyn Bridge, at a certain point, you see the skyscrapers of downtown Manhattan coming up, and the first towers you saw were the World Trade Center. So, it had a personal meaning for me as well. And when I had already moved back to Amsterdam, we were traveling in Turkey, Western Turkey, on the day of 9/11, and we were visiting an archaeological site of remains of a Byzantine church. And it was a beautiful day. It was very sunny, and we were in good spirits. And suddenly I was overwhelmed by this eerie feeling that something terrible was going to happen. And I thought it was related to the place where we were at that time. And I remember there was a flock of blackbirds flying, and it was quite overwhelming. I couldn't understand it at the time, but I said to my husband, like, let's leave, because I have a feeling something terrible is going to happen. Yeah, like what? I said, I can't explain it. So we got in the car and we drove. We had to drive quite a substantial amount of kilometers that day, and it was a beautiful day. The vibe was good until we arrived in the hotel. And during that trip, this was at the time when we didn't have full access to internet on our smartphone. So we were completely disconnected from news and the rest of the world for the entire day. And when we arrived in the hotel, after we had put the luggage in the room, we had to go back to the reception area to fill out some forms. And this guy said, so did you hear about this big building in America, 110 floors? And I thought, oh gosh, that's the World Trade Center. Because I've been in that building when I worked in Manhattan. I sometimes had to be there. And I was there in one of the commodity stock exchange, commodity assets. I forgot the exact name of it, but I didn't like the building. It reminded me of a prison, the World Trade Center, because it had these narrow windows, just like 40 centimeters, 30 centimeters wide, which is probably like 11 inches. And then you had the steel bars. So it felt like prison bars to me. Yeah. But I've seen the building. It was solid. And so when we saw the footage of the building collapse, my first response was, how is this possible? Yeah. I don't understand. And, it goes to show you how programmed we are, because then they had the narrative on the shelf, like, oh yeah, because of the pressure and blah blah blah, and because of the heat, blah 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 blah, and the pancake effect, blah blah blah, it can collapse.
Yeah, and but you see what happened is that event kind of ripped through time. It was another one of those time events where people say, I remember, a bit like JFK being assassinated by Bush Sr. and others. It creates a time capsule where you're stuck in it. And this is part of the issue, is then if you get immersed in, and this is why I keep talking about step out, step back, and overview it. Don't go inside, because basically you're becoming trapped in the propaganda bubble.
Yes.
And Americans, I was in the UK at the time, and I thought, oh my God, if I'm going to move to America, I have to go now. Naively then I thought they're going to shut the borders. They kind of opened them up a bit more, which doesn't make sense either. But it created a time rip. Basically, Americans suffered obviously a lot more than anybody else. Went into complete shock that lasted at least 10, 11, 12 years. And so the narrative was contained in the bubble. Well, if the narrative's outside of the bubble, how are you going to hear it? And of course, people will remember the time they were told, where they were, how they felt, and this is what I talk about, travelling back in time. Because the minute 9/11 comes up, the thought form jumps you back to that time bubble. And that's why it was such an important event. It changed the parameters of time and people, mainly in America, but all around the world. And so that was why it was important for you. But you kind of recognised it. Did you recognise at the time You know, you look back, we all look back on certain events, you recognise at the time that it was your intuition telling you the world's changed.
Oh yes, yeah, it was very frightening because it felt like the ground under our feet was moved away, and again we were in a Muslim country, we were in Turkey, and the sentiment there, and it's kind of harsh to hear for some people probably, but the sentiment was very much like America got what they deserved, but there was also this tension of, oh, maybe this is the start of the Third World War, and so it was quite frightening, and the airports were closed, so we were locked into the country. So yes, certainly everything changed, but I have to say I was so programmed that I accepted the narrative at the time and didn't really think about it. I think if I would have thought about it or researched it, I would have come to another conclusion, but I guess
even if you do the research, I'll tell you, because I was active then, and the first thing I saw, because I came in from work later on, I think it was around midday in America, in New York, but it was about 5 o'clock for me, and I saw at that point the towers had both collapsed, and I went, that's BS.
Yeah, can it be?
You know, and so I was looking, and I can tell you there was very few people who were questioning the events of that day. Very, very few. It was less than a handful. And I went searching because I thought, you know, am I the only one that's seeing this for what it is? But the problem was they were all stuck in the shock bubble.
Yes, that's the emotional aspect, and of course I was worried about my friends and the people there, and luckily I didn't lose any of my friends, but some were pretty close or were supposed to be in the building that day. I just remember that I didn't understand how they could collapse the buildings knowing that it had a steel construction, but then I accepted the expert's narrative and thinking, oh, well, I'm not good at physics, so I'm probably not smart enough to understand this. But so that's a lesson learned. Never think that, because...
You didn't understand it because...
It's impossible.
Because what they've put out is a conspiracy theory.
Yes.
Because it's not based on fact, is it? The alleged planes, in inverted commas, and we'll leave it at that. The buildings were meant to withstand those planes. So, a piece of aluminum, or aluminium as you say over there, hitting reinforced steel and concrete would bounce off. Not sail through. That's missile technology.
Yes.
Whichever way you look at it. And then the theory of the collapsing buildings makes even less sense than the plane hitting the building. Because, the bottom 76 floors wasn't on fire, so how could they melt?
Yes. And it vaporized. It turned into dust. It didn't collapse. It turned into dust if you study it later on. Yeah,
it's advanced weaponry. But in essence, 9/11 was an MK Ultra project for the whole populace.
Yeah.
It was a mind control. Basically, they froze your brain and then tried to steer a narrative into it for you to accept and go forward with the New World Order.
Yes. Well, it worked for a while.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
But not long term.
No, once there was like a critical mass reached around 2011, 2012, when people started waking up and seeing things for what they are, which is all BS, But you mentioned that you like myself and some of the others that have come on the show all said the same thing. you were introverted, shy, and troublemaker, always thought different, and the key aspect is you thought you were born in a world that doesn't feel like home.
Right.
Has that changed?
Not completely, no.
No.
But I certainly grew up in an area where I didn't feel at home, and it was more related to the environment of the people in the community than my parents, because they were very warm and supportive. But the system and just knowing deep down inside that it could be much better, and I had the feeling that I had to fight a lot, or to I had problems with authorities.
Yes.
Again, I wasn't a troublemaker, but I had, fierce discussions with teachers.
You're my type of person. Teachers. Yeah, teachers and parents.
They're not used to, the fact that kids can talk back to them. If something was unjust, I would speak out, and people were in a shock. Like, what?
That's the key word. You just said it. It's the injustice that a lot of us in this community don't like. Yeah,
it's very much ingrained in not just my entire childhood and teenage years, but I think this is also what's driving me to do the blog, because something is so wrong in the world, and one of the things, I mean, apart from the outrage of the New World Order and their fascist model and their planned Holocaust and genocide, it's also the knowledge about the sexual and satanic abuse. It was really a catalyst. After the first shock wore off, I just decided I'm not going to put up with this.
No.
I'm not going to have my kids grow up in a world that is this evil, and it has to stop. And I'm going to do whatever I can do to be part of a movement to make this stop, because it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yes, it is. It's insane, as we say in the show.
Yeah. And what's so strange is that I'm surrounded still with sweet people and service to others, but they are not awakened, and they refuse to look at it. And sometimes I tell them a little bit, and mostly you can't even address it. But when you talk about this, everybody agrees that if you touch children, then you cross a line. But then no one wants to do anything.
Yeah, you just said that's the key.
Yeah.
One of the most difficult subjects to approach in the alternative media is the children issue.
Yes.
Because people shut down automatically. They don't want to hear that Catholic priest was not just Catholic, they're all involved in it, but that's been the highlight.
Yes.
Are messing with children, that the Catholic Church is trafficking children, they're involved in organ harvesting, they're involved in creating wars where it separates children from their families, i.e. Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Iraq. They're all separating the families, and the parents are being funneled into Europe, but the children go missing. And it was kind of ironic, in a recent episode of The Blacklist, it showed that.
Yes.
2 or 3 episodes back, it shows you the child trafficking, and people just don't want to hear it, and it, the example was when we did the Svarley show, the information from Svarley was an Illuminati MK Ultra programmer.
Yes.
She suffered as well, but she was a programmer. And people couldn't handle it. It's too much, and I get that.
It's so dark and it's so evil, but it's also I made a conscious choice to change that into a driving force, so to come into action and to do something about it. And I think what a lot of people are struggling with is they feel powerless, and we have to accept that most of us don't work with the police or with the military or in the Secret Service, so we can't take on that responsibility to make those arrests or whatever. But people have to also realize that by just shifting your focus onto this topic and shifting your focus onto the victims that we've abandoned collectively tremendously, but just by shifting our focus on the victims and deciding consciously we want this to stop, it's already making a huge change. So by just spending some time, looking at this horrible picture, is already making a change.
It has, like it
already has.
I did that piece in the second hour, and people were thinking, Miss Manner's coming on, or maybe somebody else, because people forget. It's the alternative media, in all its forms, that have driven us where we are now. Because we've had the balls to look at it, and certain ones have driven it into the public arena. And there's no excuse now for the sleepers to not see it, because it's already there. So in essence, that part of it, to me anyway, and whilst we shouldn't ignore it totally, our role is complete on that, because it's now in the public, and part of the indictments that are being bandied around are to do with that. We drove that. It's us that drove, and we'll probably be touching on that shortly, the ET narrative, because people want to know more about it, and the more you want to know, the more you get back. That's how it works in essence. So if you keep ignoring, well, I'll talk about the banking stuff, they'll talk about that where it's money and money affects them. But don't tell me about ETs, and don't tell me about kids being satanic rituals and carted off on boats and trucks and all kinds of other things for all kinds of experiments, etc., because I don't want to hear it, except when it happens to their child. But people have this opinion, these things don't happen to them. And that's the illusion and delusion.
And what's really upsetting is that it's so embedded in the control structure, where it's also used as a blackmail instrument. So that basically you can conclude, based on the witness statement I've listened to, is that the top political top and the royals, they're all involved in it. And we have like 17 million Dutch people. Let's just say that 10 million people would be aware of this, and not just have heard of it, but they have really acknowledged the existence of this, that they do these horrible things to children. Don't you think it's going to change something on a political level? It changes everything, because now they can still pretend that they're decent people, but when people realize that they're not, then everything changes, everything.
But it comes back, and you will have experienced this in Holland, just the same as everywhere else. It comes back to what I mentioned on the last show. It's just little old me, what can I do? When you can do everything.
But that's why we like to encourage people to also face the not so happy topics, because and we can't put in out one article after another about this topic, because then I will have very few readers. But once in a while we put it out, and it's really an important topic.
Yeah, it's all about stair-stepping. That's what THI is all about. I've stair-stepped our listeners into the information, where you've got to get a grasp of the different layers to understand what's getting anywhere near, and there's very few who are anywhere near, and this is the reality, the real bigger picture, what's going on here. Mm-hmm. There's layers within layers within layers, and most people are dealing with the lower layers. But there's much bigger layers that is going on that we touch on occasionally, because it's got to be introduced. You can't just throw it all out, because what we're dealing with now is information overload. And I warned this was happening this year. This deliberate, because it's another mind program on people to distort their thinking and thinking this is too much. It's all negative and it's all this and all that. Well, it's only negative in that volume because you chose to ignore it all of your life, because we've all had warnings of it. All of us. That's why it's all negative in a shorter span.
But I think it's also very enriching to realize that it's part of a much bigger story to be told, that it is a spiritual battle that goes beyond even, Earth. And that's something that makes it also important to outline this bigger picture, because otherwise people can't even they were not willing to accept that human beings could be this evil. But if you put it in a bigger perspective, then it starts to make more sense. And so this is the role that we take on in the blog, to outline this bigger picture and make a small change. We are with so many people in the world that if we all make a small change, it's going to make a big difference. So never disregard your own role or feel powerless, because we are not.
No, the people have always had the power. It's the illusion to think themselves that they don't. And that becomes part of the programming issue, and the insecurities that many people carry, which is why we mentioned about doing the shadow work and dealing with your inner work, because many in THI have been doing it, and many are staying calm and balanced at this time, when everything else around the world, even if you're not seeing it in the news, although there's plenty of it in the news now, the so-called conspiracy theories have all been slashed because they're now all in the public arena. But by dealing with your own shadow, you're then able to accept the truth of what everything else is going on. And this is why a lot of THI members are now in a balanced and calm state. When we all sense it at this time. You mentioned it in the talk before the show. You can feel it. You know something big's going on. We can all sense it.
Yes. And we also have to set the example. I think we are the role models, because when I was truly waking up to the bigger picture and started to connect the dots, I was in big shock, and I basically opened up my shutters, because I wanted to know everything, because I realized I've been lied to all my life. They're not telling me the truth in the media, not in school, and etc. So now I want to learn as much as possible, as fast as possible. And people around me started to get worried, like, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm going through a process. And they would look at me like, I don't know what kind of process that is, but
I do.
I think a bath.
Yeah, a rebirth.
But now they see that we are still okay. We still have normal lives. We're happy and, we enjoy things. And so we are the example to show them that it's safe to open yourself up to this information, because it's not going to knock you down.
Yeah, the way shows.
Yeah.
In essence, we're all born into this illusion. People were born in pods or bubbles, but some never came in those pods or bubbles. And what's happened is we've been popping those pods and bubbles as time has gone on. And those bubbles are being popped so that then they can see what's really going on when you look back. And you mentioned about remarkable events taking place in 2010 through 14, which made a lot of sense later. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, there are, because people sometimes ask me, like, since when did you wake up? And it's always hard to pinpoint, because first things come in a separate form. But I really believe that things are also related to cosmic changes, so that people are more receptive to certain information. But I had a number of very significant and very remarkable events happening in my life, that some were paranormal and some were situations where I was led onto a certain path, or came in a certain situation, location, or met certain people, that was all related to satanic networks in retrospect, but I didn't know it at the time. And because there were a significant number of these events, they're not coincidences anymore. I can't deny them.
No.
There was something, I don't know if it was an entity or entities around me, but there was something trying to bring across a message. And the first thing that happened was in 2010. I was, this is quite an amazing story for me, that probably will make a lot of sense for the THI listeners, and sound maybe ridiculous for other people, I don't know. But I was I was working on a project with the theme of King Arthur and the Round Table, and I had to prepare a business presentation about this story, and I was rehearsing the presentation. I was alone in my living room, and I sort of kept rehearsing the statement, like, the Round Table is a game, like a game of chess. And suddenly something changed in the room. There was a big bang, and I was, shocked and taken by surprise. And then I realized that the picture frame had slid out off the shelf and was scattered in 1,000 glass pieces all over the floor. And there were two vases that contained pens and markers and a scissor, and they also fell on the floor. So it was a big mess, and I tried to make sense of it. But I also sensed a certain energy that was giving me goose skin all over my body. And it felt like there was an entity there, but I don't know. It could have been just an energetic change. I don't know. But what was so remarkable was that the scissor, which had been in the container with the blades and the points pointing downwards, it had flown in the air, opened up, the blades had opened up and landed with both points apart in an exact 90-degree angle into the wooden floor. And I was just staring at it like, what? this is not possible. This is, this is magic.
Yeah.
And this is bringing me a message. What's the message? And the first thought that came to mind was, it reminds me of a pair of compasses and the Freemason symbol. That I knew. I didn't know about Illuminati or, New World Order or conspiracies, nothing like that. So I went to the library and I got myself a book about Freemasonry and symbolism, but it was just this official version that didn't really give me a lot of information. So at a certain point I turned it aside and forgot about it. But then later on, when I was doing more research, I remembered what had happened, and I knew already at the time that it was a significant thing.
Yeah.
And this is just one example of really strange things happening, and maybe we can touch upon another story a little later when we talk about the ITCCS, but so many things happened in that time frame of 2010, 2012 that I didn't understand, but later on, I understood, okay, I was meant to be there. I was meant to meet this person. I was meant to feel this kind of energy. And much was related to the satanic ritual abuse. So that's why I feel sort of confirmed that I have to take on this topic, because things happened for a reason.
Yeah. I think a lot of people who are listening to this show and read your blog and listen to THI have all had that same feeling with strange paranormal events. Of course, this is the 11th an evening with Thomas, and each one of them has mentioned some what would be described as an off-the-wall event. But is it? Or is that the way just society has conditioned you to think these things are not possible?
Yeah.
I've mentioned this before. I got thrown out of religious education. It's not a surprise. I was thrown out of many classes. But they're asking you to not believe in ghosts and not believe in ETs because it doesn't suit their agenda, and don't believe in psychics and all this stuff that appears as being created as being off the wall, as they call it. And yet we're told to read a book, all of us, where it explains talking snakes, bushes going on fire by themselves that talk to you, and oceans parting and the good guys run across, and then when the bad guys get there, the oceans close up and drown them all. I mean,
well, you're not supposed to know the magic yourself. That's the thing. They don't want you to get in touch with that kind of magic, because if you do get in touch with it and you learn how to use it, then they're powerless. So
this is the key. I'm glad you brought that up, because maybe if you haven't watched it yet, maybe the movie that I mentioned on Thursday, again, it's not a coincidence, The Other Life, maybe you get some understanding on that. So what's that? You'll get an understanding of who did that and why. Right. So you then so 9/11 was kind of your Pandora's box, and then you became aware of the New World Order and the freedom movement, and then the subject no one likes to talk about, although we all do in the alternative media, is the ET existence and the fact that we're not alone. How did you approach that?
Well, it was really funny because my brother told me about 9/11 Truth, and funny enough, none of my New York friends mentioned it, and none of my Dutch friends that lived in New York had mentioned it. So I was in the dark for quite a number of years. So my brother told me, no, it's an inside job, and he's very analytical and thorough. So he did an extensive research. So and he said, I'll send you some links and videos and documents, but I didn't look at it for weeks or maybe months because I knew, oh dear, if I open up this box, it's going to change everything,
Yes.
because he's probably right. And, you can put it off for a while, but you have to face it one day. So I did. And, of course I was in shock and doing more and more research. And the more you researched, the bigger the shock. What's really going on. So, and he would, we would talk on the phone and I would ask him, like, did you find any more information about 9/11? And he said, no, I moved on to another topic. And I said, like what? And he said, UFOs and ETs. And I was so programmed, and I blurted out, do you believe that exists?
Yeah.
And, and he said, no, well, it exists. It's not a matter of believing, because there's already a lot of proof out there and documents, and some governments have put files, they disclosed files and stuff. But the idea that we always have thought that we're the only intelligent species in the universe, it's quite hilarious. And
it's arrogant as well.
But it's also really funny. It's really funny.
When you look at it from a common sense point of view.
Yes, it's so
but people
ridiculous.
don't look at things in common sense. That's why 9/11, the real truth of 9/11 has not yet been released. Because insufficient people, although it is increasing, have not looked at it with a common sense, free thinking mode. And this is part of the problem of the education. We were free thinkers, critical thinkers, the ones that thought outside the box and asked the questions that the teachers didn't like answering because they probably didn't know the answer. Once you start critical thinking anything, this whole system collapses.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's repeat and follow. And this is why I mentioned recently, and I called them the portal people. Because in essence, they are reporting news that is not relevant to us in this world. It's all part of the illusion. It's all part of the program, and it's all part of the mind control. They're the problem, because people can believe or not believe in ETs, and that's fine. It's like people don't believe in religion, and people do. Mm-hmm. Although you always find it's the opposite. That is the more vocal, the one that wants to protect the illusion. It's the ones that are more vocal,
true.
Which is a psychology course in itself. But you go and tell them, but 33 countries have released all the papers to do with ETs. Yeah. There's your proof. Well, it hasn't been on Sky News, or it hasn't been on Fox, or it hasn't been on CNN, so it doesn't exist. That's why they're the portal people, because they're denying the real news. They're the ones responsible. Your
programs, but I also I make a very clear statement on my blog. Like, you don't have to believe in ETs to make this world a better place.
No.
This is the first priority. I think we have to fix our mess and regain our power back. And the ET issue comes second. And of course, it's very much embedded in what's going on behind the scenes, and you can't really explain the control system without, touching on the ET issue.
No.
But I do reject the idea of, us being saved or putting other ET races as our new guardians, as is portrayed by some groups.
Yeah.
I really resist that.
No, because it didn't work out well 16,500 years ago.
No, not really.
It's like all of us will know a friend or a relation or whatever, where that child has stayed with their parents too long. They don't grow up in the right way, where they can stand on their own 2 feet. And yes, it's nice that parents may or may not love them. There's various parents, as we know. But we call it molly coddling in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look after children too much. And basically, that's the bigger picture, where a group decided that they're all powerful and much better than us, and they're capable of looking after us. And we went, okay, we can't carry on doing that, because in the same aspect, we're doing the same. People are looking for Trump to fix things. Why does Trump have to fix it? It's your mess. Yes, Trump can do certain things, but he's not in control of it. There's many more pulling strings, and others pulling strings from below as well as above, because Trump's being pulled in different directions. And it's all about creating a platform for him to operate on the right side, hopefully, and it appears that way currently. But we still got those string pullers hidden behind the scenes.
But I think this whole aspect of, when we gave away our responsibility and made other people responsible to fix things for us, it also makes us lazy.
Yeah.
And I think we're at the time in history to take back that responsibility. And that's why we have to stand on our own feet.
Yeah.
But it's so embedded in people's mind. Often I have these conversations when you can even bring it up, because usually you can't even address the topics that we talk about and I write about. But what can I do? And it's not my responsibility. They literally say that it's not my responsibility to do something about it. Whereas
they like the slave suits.
It's everyone's responsibility to make a change and to, steer it into a different direction.
How can anyone who desires freedom want somebody else to fix that for them? Just think, people who listen to the show, think about what I've just said there. How can you have freedom when it's in the hands of somebody else? Real freedom is when it's in your own hands, and that requires personal responsibility. And yes, you can want for all kinds of things, Nasaras and all that nonsense that's gone on in the alternative media. But real freedom comes from within. And you make the change to not allow lies and fraud and corruption and satanic abuse and all the other stuff to perpetrate your realm. And when you get a collection of realms with all people doing the same thing, then you have a real shot of freedom. That's what we tried to create with THI, where everyone's looking after each other. Everyone is caring and sharing for each other. If one gets into trouble, the other one tries to help them. And if we can wheel that out to the wider public via the foundation, then we're going to have an awful lot of people all caring and sharing. And that requires them having an input not somebody driving it. Yes, you always need, people will always need leaders in inverted commas, but it's leading by example, not leading by the big boot of control. You follow me or else, no. But to obtain freedom, that's a personal responsibility. It's not Trump's responsibility. It's not the government's responsibility. It's not the police's responsibility. It's ours. And so that's the way we need to go forward with it.
Well, and also people have to realize that when you make no choice or you do not participate, that's also a choice. And this is what I hear a lot, like, I don't want to get involved because, I rather spend my time on something else. But that's also a choice. And then you let other people determine what the agenda is that is being rolled out. And if you look at what kind of agenda is rolled out, that's not making me very happy in the way it's going from the control structure. And I'm not going to have it, basically.
No. Well, if you bring up, let's use an example, child sexual abuse. At this point, because, again, I've said earlier, it's gone viral, if you choose to ignore it, you're an accomplice to that child abuse. Mm-hmm. And most people don't react badly to that. Well, good. Mm-hmm. Let them react badly, because we feel bad because they just ignore, because it's not happened to their kids, you see, or their family or friends, so it doesn't really matter. Well, actually it does. And if it happens to American kids, it's important. If it happens to Iraqi kids, it's important. If it happens to North Korean children, it's important. And the sooner we start thinking that way, well, it's happening over there, there's nothing I can do. Well, yes, there's everything you can do. You can voice your opinion. We're not happy with this. You can go on newspapers, again, they're like portal people, second stage, and go on their blogs and tell them, you're writing a load of crap. We want the truth. We know what's going on. You write it or we shut you down. Because we have the power to shut them down. CNN's collapsing. It's about that 20% of his listenership. It's collapsing in on itself. Why? Because the alternative media decided we're not listening.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing is, usually it's an excuse. If it happens in a faraway country, it's an excuse not to deal with it, which is not good, but that's the psyche of the human mind. But, when it comes to sexual and satanic abuse of children, it happens in your backyard. And that's why I spent a large number of articles on things that are going on here in the Netherlands, on this side of the ocean, to show people no, it's not a faraway country. It's our politicians who are doing this. It's happening here. It's our children taken out of foster homes or juvenile detention centers that are sacrificed for their purposes, and we have to, face it, and we have to write to Parliament or write to the newspapers. Why are you not reporting it en masse? Not just one individual, but en masse.
You're wasting your time with the Parliament. Because somewhere or other, whether it's because they choose to be involved in that sort of stuff, and there are people, I was speaking to my brother-in-law and he says, I can't comprehend this level of evil. I said, yes, because you're putting your own morals on it. These people don't have our morals. I said,
they sold the soul. Yeah.
I said, but there's people in there whose egos became imbalanced and got the better of them. So you'll become the minister of blah blah, or you'll become this and you'll become that, but you'll have to take part in this. And once they've took that their own Pandora's box and done that one event where it's a ritual or involved with sex with children. Mm-hmm. It's all filmed, and then they've got you because you're in that report and you can't turn back. And there's a lot of them who deeply regret being involved. But but if how are they going to back out? And this is where I'm on the show. I'm trying to get people to look at both sides. How are they able to back out when the media and the portal people will splash all their file right across the internet and across all the world TVs?
I think they're also being killed before they can even spill their beans. Yeah. There was a politician, Els Borst. I suspect that she wanted to disclose some information, and she was killed. And then, of course, they found a patsy, and they created a story, and blah 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 blah. And most people believe it, but I think there's something hidden in that story in itself. And so that already sets an example for the other politicians, like, look, this is what's going to happen to you if you speak out. So shut up. So
Ella was born, so to speak, and then you discovered a certain group and a desire to write and report, and then you came into some obstacles. Can you talk about that before we go into a music break?
Yes. Well, when I decided I wanted to get involved in the truth movement, it was like almost like a spiritual calling. I knew I didn't want to do it under my own name because I'm living in two worlds right now. That I'm, surrounded with people who do not want to face this stuff, and I have clients that have the portraits of the royal family on their office wall. So, I'm going to have a little bit of trouble understanding what I'm doing in my free time. But so I just decided to create a pseudonym, Alastair, and I started to do a lot of research, but it's actually a funny story. I came across this video of the famous interview with Drake Bailey and David Wilcock.
Yeah.
And, Drake, he's all over the place and takes sideways and another sideway and speaks into metaphors. And at first I didn't understand what he was talking about, and I wanted to switch off the video and turn on another until he started to talk about the Nation States Project. And I was like, what? The United States no longer exists and all states have declared themselves independent. Yeah. Why is this not on the front page news? And so I started to make notes, and I listened to the show a couple of times and then decided, I want to hear more from this Drake person. So I looked up some more videos, and I came across the Cosmic Voice radio shows, and listened every week and made small bullet points summaries, and the bullet points became paragraphs, and the paragraphs became a few letter size articles. Yeah. And at first I used Facebook I used it as a blog just to post these longer messages, and I used it on the side besides Twitter as well. But I had collected so many notes, and so many interesting topics were discussed in these shows that I decided to write a couple of articles to sort of combine to combine all the information and connect the dots of the different topics, like the mass arrest plan and the the positive military and the FEMA camps and Jade Helm, what was taking place at that time, and all these things combined. And but then I needed a platform to publish these, and sometimes it worked and they published it, and then at other times my mails would get lost, or I would use the wrong email address, or somebody got busy, or didn't have time to look at it, and I got very frustrated. But what's nice about this is that sometimes things are not working out for them to really work out. In other words, I was supposed to start my own blog, and so I was facing a lot of resistance in getting things published on other people's blog, and that didn't work for me anymore. And then Facebook was having some issues with me having a second Facebook account under pseudonym. The algorithm picks up that it's not my true identity. And so they kept asking me for ID papers. It's kind of hard when you have a pseudonym to come up with a passport.
Yeah. Unless you work for the CIA.
Yeah, well, it's probably not so wise to forger it. So I decided to leave it. But then I didn't have any platform anymore. So that was sort of the last drop. Okay, now I'm done. Now I'm really going to start my own blog, and so that's what I did. And it's very fulfilling, and it's something that I very much enjoy doing. So it's for the better that it's happened this way.
Yeah. Well, I know there was many of the members and people close to me all wanting me to leave Cosmic Voice. It's not the way I work, and I said at the time to those people, I was offered 3 radio shows, all paid for, and I chose to stay with Drake.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if it's on my path to go on do my own show, something will take place to facilitate it. If it's not, it won't happen. Well, it was on my path. I don't think most of our members or the listeners prefer listening to THI than listening to Cosmic Voice these days, and that's their choice. There's Drake kind of splits an opinion, but like I said in the last show, he's had some value. I don't think he recognises some of the value he's had. Even the ones that have gone down wrong paths in the alternative media, which has been mentioned on many shows now, I've still put forward some elements that have woken people up. I'll give you an example. Alex Jones. That guy is not to be trusted at all. We know who he works for, we know who pays him, but he has helped wake the ones who have lagged behind the rest of us. He's of no use to us now who've been in it 3 or 4 years, none whatsoever. And that's why a lot don't listen to him, because you're only getting elements of the truth and not the full truth, and that's part of the problem. So you started your own blog, and you're pleased how it's going.
Yeah, it's I'm attracting more and more readers. When I started out, I said, if I have a few thousand readers per month, I'm already happy, because that would be much more than writing maybe a dozen emails to friends and relatives or acquaintances.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes attracting 100,000 or 200,000 visitors per month, cool. Which is small for American standards, but I was quite...
That's absolutely fantastic.
Surprised, like, okay.
But why are you surprised? You've got to believe in yourself.
Because I didn't have that expectation. I didn't have that expectation. But it's nice to see that, and even the more difficult topics, Kevin's work, and we will touch on it after the music break. But even those topics are really picked up now by a larger audience. So that's really good. I'm pleased about that.
Because it's the year of the unraveling.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, we're going to have a music break, and then we'll be back with more from Ella. And here's a next song from India Ari called There's Hope. Hi all, and welcome back to An Evening with Thomas. With our guest today is Alastair, all the way from the Netherlands. And we've had some interesting chats in the first hour, and we're going to go into a bit more of Ella's story and what she wants to cover. And the next section you want to cover is a longing to heal the world. Do you want to talk a bit about that as we go into the core of evil?
Yes. Yeah, we've already discussed it in the first hour that the satanic and sexual abuse of children and the sacrifices that go on in churches and by the political and royal top is so heinous that I just want to make this stop. So this is really a driving force. From the very beginning, this was one of the things that was the biggest motivator to get involved. And that's why I also reported a substantial amount of articles also before I even had the blog on Kevin's work and the ITCCS, because he's going for the head of the monster, and that he's going to the core of the evil, and that's why he's also facing so much opposition. I'm convinced of that, because every time I put something out that's related to him or to the organization behind him, it brings out the trolls. It really is amazing, but they come out of all corners, and they try to take over my comment section on the blog, and I know that they're trolls. Not all of them. Maybe some people are just skeptic, or finding it hard to believe, or maybe some are detractors for other reasons. But some are just plain trolls, because to give you an example, I did an interview that lasted 20 minutes, and I had published it on YouTube. And it was only on YouTube for 5 minutes, and within 5 minutes I had a number of trolls made comments below the video. They couldn't even have watched it. So there's a whole machinery of people scanning the internet 24/7 to discredit him, and creating smear campaign, and so that was. It was quite obvious what's happening there. And another thing I would like to mention, and I'm really grateful you brought it up a few weeks ago, I think, about the shielding.
Yeah.
When I do topics like this and interviews like this, I always do my session of grounding, centering and shielding beforehand and also after. And I usually feel very, very strong after an interview like that. Like I can conquer the world, and I can conquer the Vatican and just bring it on, that kind of power. But I noticed a few times after an interview with Kevin, then there was an energetic attack taking place. And you mentioned a few weeks ago, like, don't forget the space below your feet. And that's what happened, because I forgot to protect that. And so it was, I can sort of describe it as a sort of swirling, energetic, spiraling movement, sort of sucking my energy, and it drained me, and it made me very down and depressed. But I realized that it was an outside force. It was not something related to me or something in my life that, you know, was the cause of this. And this happened a number of times. So there is stuff going on. And I think they are using black magic, and they are trying to attack the people around certain key figures. So it's really necessary to protect yourself very well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I witnessed, I went to a reading with Kevin, and I shielded initially both Chloe and I, and there was a couple of THI members, and then I got distracted. And as Kevin was talking about he'd shown a small presentation, an entity appeared behind him, and it saw that I saw it, and it ran. So, you know, a lot. Again, this is getting into the realms of people saying, "Well, that's off the wall. How can you see something that's not there?" And yet there's 4.5 billion on the planet who believe in God or the Lord, who nobody's ever seen, or Jesus for that matter. Nobody on this planet, apart from a couple of psychotic parents, have seen the entity known as Jesus, and yet everyone just automatically believes. And it's this hypocritical nature of society, and it is important, because going forward into the future, I'm not going to give a timeline. Going into the future, we're going to have to be learning how to counteract black magic. Now, you know, the cabal can go tomorrow, but we still have to learn the secrets of what's going on to prevent any further attacks in the future.
Yes.
And that's why with Chloe and I prepared the ground and centering and shielding documents. And people go, well, it doesn't work. Well, actually it does. Anything can work if you put the right intention to it. They just know the secrets to it.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful that you put this information out, because I feel like a layman just doing something from my heart, but, you know, I'm also aware that...
But that's enough. You've set the intent.
Yes, that's the most important thing, but I'm also entering a realm that I'm not experienced in how to conquer it. So I'm grateful that you put the information out, also together with Tanaf, to protect yourself and to become a warrior and fight it off if necessary. Because it is necessary. This is not just a battle that is taking place on the physical level. This goes way beyond other realms. And I've sensed it. Yeah.
It's going through the etheric realm. It's going into the lower astral, the higher astral, and on some of the mental planes. But as you reach your own personal development and acquire or attain the mental level, then your abilities come in. More and more of your own abilities. And everyone has them. But if you're going to be given gifts, you have to learn how to use them and use them correctly. But the most important thing is you have to believe you can use them. They know those secrets. We don't. Largely,
Mm-hmm.
the general public doesn't. Even a lot of people in the alternative media are not aware of it. You know, they'll talk about political things and Trump and this and that, and you're missing the bigger picture, because that's the sideshow in many ways. And you know, we have to maybe in the future, and there are plans afoot of teaching this type of magic, and but the important thing is we have to be responsible. So it's not about going slashing people or burning people, you know, in an act of violent revenge, because that's us then going down their path. Yes, there are times when you have to use all means necessary, and particularly in that realm, you have to fight for your life. Because everyone, there might be a number of people who listen to this show who don't believe in it, but I'm going to tell you an example which everyone who listens to this show has experienced, where they've woke up short of breath, gasping, and cold sweat. That is your spirit having been attacked and was on the point of death, and it's managed to slam back in the vessel. Normally there's a 2 to 5 minute window where the spirit comes back in. This is where the spirit goes in your so-called dream time, which may actually be the real time, but we'll leave that for now. And it's been trapped and not being able to get back into its own shielding, which is the human vessel. And it's had to, the body had then, which has been switched down to just ticking over, suddenly has this whole spirit enter the vessel, and everything's not switched back on, and it's too much. And this is why so many people die in their sleep, because they've been unable to get do the procedure, the steps for a safe return, for the vessel to wake back up, and then the spirit comes back in.
Maybe this is a topic that you can address in one of your future shows, because I would be very interested to learn about this.
Okay.
More. Yeah.
So then, the trolls. This is part of life. I've no doubt there's shills listening, paid government agency script writers. Message to them folk: your day is near.
Exactly.
Because these people who go on and block Kevin's information or block our show and block others, you have sold humanity out for a paycheck. To me, that's the lowest of the low. And your day's coming.
And the same goes for the media people. Yeah,
well, I can't say too much on that, but maybe their day's coming as well.
Yeah. If they would do their job, I would be doing something else right now.
We would be helping the ones who wouldn't expand their own truth bubble, because they will lose it. You know, people are seeing it now. I warned it would come, where people will start losing it. Basically, everyone now knows something's not right with this world. They all know, but they've got their own inner battle going on. And the first thing they do is they project onto the one who gave them the information, because they haven't learned to develop it from within. So disclosure on Pedogate, do you think that will bring down the control structure? Certainly help, won't it?
Yeah, because it's I think it's the core of the evil, and it's also if there's one thing that the masses are not going to be able to deal with, it's this topic, what they do to children, and the things that have come out, through the mainstream media, is already bad enough in itself, but it's still minor to what
tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, what is really taking place behind the scenes. And I probably just slightly touched on it and have seen the tip of that iceberg, but it's so horrendous, and the scope is so enormous, and the depth of the abuse goes so deep, and it's so dark that people are just not going to put up with it. And this is why I think people that disclose information about satanic ritual abuse, they are so fiercely attacked, and you see it over and over and over again. But message to these people, I cannot be compromised, because this is a spiritual mission, and nothing is going to derail me, whatever you try. So I have to do this.
To use for the benefit of the listeners, there's a whole range to do with children, and you've only heard the lowest level.
Mm-hmm.
The ritual sacrifice, the sexual abuse, the mind control programming of kids to turn on their abilities, which was covered in the last X-Files, funny enough.
And that series that you mentioned in the other show, Stranger Things.
Yeah. They militarized the children.
Yes, horrible.
And the organ harvesting is a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the other issue is collecting the endocrine fluid from children, which then is life enhancing for these clowns.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're the different levels that many might not be aware of, and many might not like hearing it. But what I'm doing is giving you a heads up to the listeners, is this is what you're going to be hearing about, whether you like it or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And Pedogate, in essence, has the potential to collapse the whole system, because it involves all the players of the control structure, which doesn't just involve churches and government people. It involves our structures as well, the people's structures, because they're nothing to do with us. The governments, people think the governments are for and by the people. Yeah, right. That's an illusion. Governments just operate on behalf of the church. That's why in the UK it's called a prime minister, head of the church.
Mm-hmm.
But
which church?
Exactly. Well, of course, in England it's the Church of England, which is the Protestants, which is not a religion. For those of you who've done more research, they will know that. But I'm telling you, it's not a religion. But the very structures we all hold dear and trust, which is schools, hospitals, doctors and social services, because they're all involved in it, and the justice system, the law courts. Those five, which are more common to the people than the church or the head of the church and the government, are all involved in this child issue.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the benefits, I just want to say one more thing, because I think this will help you on your blog. You mentioned the 17 million people in Holland.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you break that down and you have into a cul-de-sac of, say, 102 people, that's 6 times 17. one in every 17 of those 102 people in a road is how many children are going missing for this abuse in America alone each year.
Yeah, and it's hard to comprehend because people that haven't seen the announcements in the newspaper, the Amber Alerts, and so they think it doesn't exist, but they picked
it can't be possible. When I outed that, I gave the low figure, which was 500,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
500,000 children go missing a year in America and are never seen again. The real figure is near 900,000 to 1 million per year.
Mm-hmm. But they pick the children that, they're a little bit out of sight, or they're not registered, or they're a part of the foster system, and they pick the easiest praise, so to speak.
No, they create the easiest praise.
This
is why they break it. Yeah. This goes into societal issues. This is why they wanted to break down the family.
Yeah.
So that kids don't have one or other of the parents, and so some kids will rebel. They get into trouble. They go into the system. Who comes in first? Social services and the police. Then it goes to the justice system, which is controlled. And then you get the hospital involved. This kid needs mental attention. And basically you just wave goodbye to that child.
Yeah. I've encountered so many stories of people who have lost their children through the so-called child protection services or foster care. No, not foster care, but can't think of the right translation here, but anyway, through the system. And we also have talked to people that were part of the foster care, and the amount of children that is abused in that system and deliberately placed in families where they knew that they were pedophiles is just it's so shocking, and
it's not a coincidence either.
It's not a coincidence, no. Exactly, no. But we also published a story of a school in the Netherlands, in Drenthe, the northeast, and there's another case in the south, in Limburg, where children were abused, like satanic abuse, raped, photographed, filmed for the porn industry during school time. And you would think that, no, this cannot happen because the police would get involved and the media would be on top of it. It's all controlled, and it's all these people were made out as liars, and they eventually the parents had to pay the fine for slander and libel and slander against the perpetrators. I mean, it's really a twisted world.
Yeah, well, I gave the example Dunblane in Scotland. For those you remember that 20, 30 years ago, those kids were talking about the Scottish politicians, well-known ones, Mr. Brown, etc., who were having sex with the children of that school. All of them, or most of them anyway, and some of them started talking. So then the Manchurian candidate came in and blew them all away, except one very prominent child, which was Andy Murray, the tennis player. You don't think he reached the top by accident, do you? I think it was Yvonne Goolagong, if memory serves me correctly, was introduced to him the week after that event. It's
a system. It's so It's protected on every single level.
So suddenly his benefit for not talking was to become the world tennis player.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. But then he's got to live with that.
But is he talking now about this?
No.
Mm.
He didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Hopefully
then it implicates him, doesn't it? Because he knew and said nothing. And he took all the trappings of fame and wealth.
But still, it's better if he does it regardless, because it's going to come out, and if he didn't pick up the opportunity while it was a little bit more safe to do, then it's going to be even tougher on him.
Yeah, this is kind of why they want disclosure around 50 years, so all the ones that have been involved now are stopped. But then, and certain programs will get shut down, which they did agree to, but they want for all of them to be dead, so there's no repercussions.
Yeah.
Well, they got told on no uncertain terms that's not happening.
I find it unacceptable. I'm not gonna accept that.
No, what I don't, it's a kind of typical subject, but given knowing what I know, I asked a question and it didn't go down too well. When I said full disclosure should come with full disclaimer. Now, there's certain elements of that you can't ignore, and it's the children issue being the main one. If you've committed financial fraud, well, there's lots of people doing that. They're working off the side, so that's financial fraud, or they're not filling in a tax return. Again, that's financial fraud. We've all done that to a certain degree. But when you get into the ritual and the child trafficking and all the other stuff, then that shouldn't be overlooked. But what I don't want, me personally, I don't think will be beneficial to humanity is a raft of public lawsuits of which money comes into it, and it's money you're never going to receive, because where's it coming from? We'd end up with each person around the world would end up with 1,000 class action lawsuits. Well, you can't get paid on one of them, never mind all of them. You're then getting embroiled in dealing with the past, when that should be done with people in the know to deal with, and we get on with moving forward to the future.
Yeah, but I think the most important thing is not the financial compensation, and when it comes to this type of abuse, there is no financial compensation, but we have to get our lessons as humanity, because even though most people were not conscious that this was taking place, collectively we have a responsibility to take, and we've abandoned the victims, and it's happening right now because the information is all over the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, satanic ritual abuse and sexual abuse by the elite is something that you can get information about and still ignored it collectively. So we have to learn a lesson here, and I think this is the most important motivation to not postpone it in 50 years, but to deal with it now, and to let people, all the sides, tell their stories, the perpetrators and the victims, so it becomes clear and it can never happen again.
Yeah.
What's the point?
No,
if it happens again,
it's going to require a lot of healing. In essence, we've already gone through that. I've used the term sin eaters because we've absorbed all this negativity and heinous crimes that they've committed, not us. But we've absorbed it to be able to then shed light on it. And that's been our role. and it's not been without cost to all of us in various degrees. You know, we've been outcast out of society. When you look at it now, we're probably glad that we are. You know, I can't imagine being operating in the world of the sleepers. It's just incomprehensible to me. But then I have a conscience and a conscience, and that's where we get into the synthetics and all that nonsense, whether people believe it or they don't. But they don't appear to have a conscience, and that's a non-human trait to me, where you can be shown, like you do your blog, shown all the hidden topics and the viewpoints, and you've planted many seeds and shown the truth and backed it with facts. And they still sit there and go, what are you talking about?
Yeah, they choose not to read it, and to go back to the victims of this sexual abuse or any kind of abuse. There is no, despite the fact that the lives of these people are often ruined, also in financial terms. The thing they want the most is acknowledgement that they're acknowledged that they have lived through this. And I think this is something that is must be embedded in all the topics that we're dealing with. Every aspect of the control system, we need to acknowledge it. Every single aspect.
Yeah.
And just, embrace it almost as, this has happened, and now we collectively choose to do something different. But we can't make that choice if we do not face what we don't want. So.
Yeah, this comes. I know you listened to the show. I mentioned, I think it was 2 shows back, about we have to change the mindset. And it's just a small, a rarely used word. But once this is out, and large chunks of it are already out, you have to change your mindset. You can't carry on thinking the same way and expecting change. You've got to think in a completely different way. Otherwise, eventually, the cabal will be phased out and the people will be phased in, which is what's taking place now. But if we're going to think and act in the same way, we're going to end up duplicating their behaviour of ego, of I'm more important than you, I've got a higher salary or better clothes, or I travel to blah blah. If that's your only goal in life, reaching the pinnacle of corporate structure, then you haven't learnt anything. It's about gaining your own personal freedom and standing in your own sovereignty. If you stand in your own sovereignty, you can be the king of your own realm. Whether somebody else is king of their realm doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
We can all be kings and queens in our own realm.
Exactly.
As long as we don't impose on other people's boundaries.
Yeah. And we can drop the titles because it's nonsense.
Yeah. I imagine over time that will get phased out. At the moment, it's still important. You have to give certain people titles because we're still operating in the 2 worlds. Eventually, they'll be phased out and you realise how ridiculous it looks.
Yes. Yeah.
Because all these important people know far less than what we do. And people go, no, well, Trump must know about this. Trump doesn't know half of what we know, because he doesn't have the need to know. And this is the way it's the control structure has worked from the very top with the ugly looking beings, and down to the parents and the covens and the Illuminati, and then you're down to government officials, and then the lowest control structure, which is the police and the justice system and the military. Military all thought they were ever so important with all the badges of dishonour, as I call them. They've just realised they're just pawns the same as everybody else. So we have a bigger picture here. Those people who thought they were important in life now realise they're expendable the same as everybody else. Oops.
Yeah, and then people just have to take the responsibility within their role. So the military have to take the responsibility within their role and their power and circle of influence. And if they don't, they have to deal with the consequences eventually. It's the same for the media and, the pharmaceuticals and everyone within their own area of expertise.
Yeah, you mentioned about expanding people's frame of reference.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important. How would you go about doing that? How can we all take part in expanding other people's frame of reference?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to your blog people about how you would go about that?
Well, it's by giving information. Yeah.
It comes down to personal responsibility. It's not your responsibility to expand other people's reference. You, as you mentioned, plant the seeds.
Yeah.
You're not responsible. You're not responsible for them growing or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you're impinging on other people's free will.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought you just carry on giving the information, whether they absorb it or they don't, on the surface. But what everyone you have spoken to, and this includes all the listeners, all the eye rollers, all the ones that change the subject, all the ones that mock or walk out, they've all heard it and it's all stuck.
Somewhere.
And eventually it'll get triggered.
Mm-hmm.
Then watch them lose it. Oh dear, yeah, those conspiracy nuts were right. What does that make me? Well, we have a number of terms for you to learn.
Yeah. But I guess we're coming close to the end of the show, and I would like to say some words of gratitude. Before I do, I want to say happy birthday to somebody who is making a very beautiful contribution and providing me a lot of input for the blog. And you know who you are. Happy birthday. I would like to thank all the people that contribute or have contributed in their free time, usually to help me out. And one person in particular, Cassandra, not the parent, and she's an editor and writer and a great support and advisor. So it's great to have her on the team. And other people I would like to mention that support me in different ways and are very important for the continuation of the blog are Joyce, Jean, Kuku, Karin, Paul, Noor, Tomo, the developer and the hosting. And I would like to mention Eric, who was the first editor, and he unfortunately passed away last year. So a big thank you to all that you've done. It's greatly appreciated. And also I would like to thank everyone in THI for, bringing their story and their contribution to the group, and thank you for bringing us all together and creating kind of like a family. Feels like, at least to me, as a family with like-minded people, and we might not agree on every single topic, but that's fine. But it's great to have that platform right now for everyone who's involved in this group, I think. So I wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, well, it just shows you, as people say, this show's all about me. And I keep telling them, no, it's not. Unless we have listeners or people who read the blog or the page, we're just talking heads.
Mm-hmm.
And, THI came out of Discord initially. And quickly it found its feet, and people realised some of the core themes which you've kind of took on with your own group, and they're all common to all of us. It's about caring and sharing, personal responsibility, agree to disagree, don't argue, don't fight. Whether the earth's flat, round, square or oblong, it doesn't really make any difference. But what does make a difference is improving the lives of everyone on this planet, free of war, poverty, famine, rituals, trafficking, and all the other stuff that is involved. And if we can get the foundation going and make THI the role model, where it becomes a program for a better reason, where we get everyone not just taking handouts from the foundation, and they will get that, but we want them to also come on board. They've been helped, so you go and help somebody else, who then goes and helps somebody else, and then we all become a family again. And that's the essence of THI, is we've gone away from being a collective and it's everyone for themselves, dog eat dog, competition world, I've got better this and better that. And all we're doing is destroying ourselves with commercialism, consumerism and competition. The 3 C's. It's the downfall of humanity, and we have to go away from that. And so how do you see us moving forward? Us and yourself.
Yeah, maybe replace the C's with other C's like care and compassion.
Yes.
Vitamin C. Yeah. Well, I'm very excited about the time we're living in right now, and as we discussed before we got live, I mean, it's a very exciting time, and you feel that there's things moving. And as you've mentioned, the 2017 is the year of the unraveling. I feel the 2018 is going to be the year of the big unveiling, where the curtain is really going to drop, and I hope it will. And hopefully I can also unveil my true identity and get more out in the world and share the information with a larger audience. I look forward to that. So yeah, I think we have a very bright future ahead of us, but it might still be very bumpy and dark on the way there. So we have to just keep on moving to the direction where we want to go, and we will get there. Yeah. So yeah,
I agree. Stay your path, stay calm, stay balanced.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do anything acting out of balance. I said many people would start losing it, and we've witnessed that. I don't expect it's going to be easy. If you think it's going to be easy, you haven't really thought enough about it. Because more and more, we all hear things and we think it's more based on speculation, that it could be this happened or that happened. Like 9/11, for example. Well, what happens to the psyche when you really find out that certain people were involved in it? And these are the type of things that I think of, run scenarios. Well, what have you told? What does that make you feel? What impact is it going to have? It's like the Pedogate. It's going to have an impact on all elements of society. It's going to bring down a church, or certainly weaken it to a point where people start questioning, and eventually once you start questioning, it all falls apart. And then they're going to look at the police's role in it, and certain, of course, many of the police in Europe are also part of the Funny Handshake Club, where the Freemasons come into it, and they can't expose their brothers. So it has impacts on that. It has impacts on the government level, but they're all involved in it. There's figures being bandied around that 75% of Congress have been involved in child porn or child interfering. 70%.
That's crazy.
What if that is actually not speculation and correct? How's that going to make you feel? How's it going to make the other world feel? So these are, in your times of quiet, these are the things you should think of. It applies to everyone. If this is announced, what impact does it have? And it's not going to be easy, as we all learn the truth of what's gone on, because none of it's pleasant. All of it is awful. And then it comes into guilt. Why did we allow this to go on for so long? Because each and every one that listens to this, not just the sleepers, we all sat back and watched it unfold. And yes, we weren't aware, and yes, there's excuses because of the programming and the education, but it still doesn't dissolve your own responsibility, where you didn't use your own mind and make your own mind up. This is where critical thinking comes in. You just follow the script. Or what if the script wasn't written by good people? And clearly that's what's happened on this planet. All the script, his story has been designed to take us away from our story.
Well, we have to write our own script, and I think it's also important to offer an alternative, a better alternative. And this life that we live, that we're living, even in a very wealthy country like the Netherlands, it could be 1,000 times better and nicer and more fun. So I think if people also see that other perspective, then it's less hard to go through the pain and confront.
Yeah, you've got to give people hope. And the planners involved, and I've put a load of different suggestions out. Some of them have been on the show, and some of them have been done in private groups. There's simple ways forward that changes everything. One of the main things that we've done, or they've done on this planet, is complicate everything. When everything could be so much more simpler. And when we all have more free time to do what is important, like looking after the kids, and not two parents having to work just to exist. We're not here to exist. We're here to live and learn, and to experience, and to develop. And that's those last two we're losing out on heavily. We're not experiencing. Many people have sacrificed vacations or holidays, as you call them in Europe, because they need the money for a phone, or do you need the money for cable TV? Technology has taken away your vacation money, in essence.
It's crazy.
You analyse what you used to spend as a parent in 1980 to what you have to buy now, and look at the difference. It's all technology. Is technology really that good for us? I know we all like it, and the internet is what drove this movement. And in essence, we've turned something that was designed to trap us in another system. In essence, we've used it to step out and leave that system behind. And it's up to all of us to take that forward and drive for a better future. Not just a few. Ella spends all their free time translating all my accents and funny words and all all that.
I'll make summaries, not translate every word.
For the people's Holland's benefit, we need more. We need an Ella in Germany. We need an Ella in Cyprus, maybe.
There probably already is one.
Not just the THI show. There's far more information than just THI. TSI packages it a lot better than others, that I've been told. It just packages it better in a way that all people of all learner levels can understand. And we drive this forward. But we can't stop. If the cabal steps down at midnight tonight, we can't stop and go, that's it, job done. No, we then have to use our creative abilities to create the better world that we all look forward to. Final words?
Well, that's a nice happy word. Because we are very creative, and we have every reason to be optimistic. The reason why they had to control us so severely was because they fear us, and so if we start using our creativity again, and our magic, and our love and passion and compassion, then it will turn out in a good way. So thank you very much for having me.
No, you're welcome.
It was a pleasure.
Enjoyed it. It's important to give people a voice. Like I said, it's not about me. It's not about you. It's about all of us. And we're off to Australia next week, which should be interesting. And where are we going after that? Oh, Florida. Someone from Florida is on the week after that. So there's lots of different guests, and that's good. So
yes.
Thanks
Excellent.
for your contribution today, and thank you even more for highlighting THI and also the work that Kevin's doing for the benefit of the people of Holland and the surrounding countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
So that brings the end of an evening with Thomas, and that was the 11th episode. Boy, that went over quick. And we're going to end. I'm going to give you a choice, Ella, because we've got two songs here. Corinne.
Oh, they're both great. Promise me you'll play the other one in in one of your shows.
I'll tell you what, we're gonna go out with two songs. That's a first. So we're gonna play them both, one after the other. Right.
Thank you very much.
This has been an evening with Thomas and Alastair, and I'll be back on Thursday, the usual time, 7:30. Maybe we might have some more exciting news by then. We'll see. Enjoy the last two songs, and bye for now.